Coming up on this week's episode of Next Gen Console Watch, Microsoft has just suffered massive layoffs. Is Game Pass to blame? We're not so sure. Maybe AI is in fact the culprit. We'll discuss all of that and more coming up on this week's episode of Next Gen Console Watch. Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening in the world of gaming hardware. I'm Ryan McCaffrey, filling in for Damon Hatfield this week, and I'm joined by my PlayStation partner in crime, Max Scoville. Max, good to see you, sir.
Hey, good to see you.
Well, this week we wanted to talk about, kind of these giant topics that are casting huge shadows over really the entire gaming industry this week, and it kind of intersects a couple different things. Game Pass and AI. So we'll start here, Max, with obviously last week we recorded the show kind of ahead of time before the July 4th weekend. And so we haven't really spoken to the horrible layoffs that were suffered at Xbox this past week. We've covered them in great detail, of course, on Unlocked, our weekly Xbox show that I host. But as far as this show goes, we're kind of now in the picking up the pieces aftermath of it. And one of those pieces is the founder of Arkane Studios, Raphael Collantonio, who's kind of hit out at Game Pass and really suggested that, well, it's an infinite money, unsustainable thing. Like the infinite money has to run out at some point. And he called it the elephant in the room, that other developers have brought it up and said, hey, this doesn't seem like a model that can work in the long term. And I'm paraphrasing him, but he basically said that it's either going to eat everything else and kill everything else, or fail completely and just go away at some point if it just doesn't achieve the world dominating thing that Microsoft wants out of it. So kind of from where you sit as somebody that plays games on everything, you host a PlayStation podcast, you know what Sony's got going on with PlayStation Plus, where certainly they are very much not putting their first party games in day and date. Like, where do you see this in the light of all these layoffs?
So, first of all, happy 15th anniversary to PlayStation Plus, which Sony just carted out, and they're doing a whole big celebration on that front. But yeah, to your point, Sony doesn't put their first party world premiere day one exclusives on PlayStation Plus, and I think that's probably for the best. You know, occasionally we get like an indie game that premieres on there, but as far as, The Last of Us Part 3 or whatever, that's not going to be dropping day and date on PlayStation Plus. And I think that is one of the most appealing things about Game Pass is that you get to play brand new triple, quadruple A games just effectively free. You know, if you're already paying for it, you don't feel like you're taking that hit, which is kind of the idea. And again, I do think there's an argument to be made that maybe that devalues the games a bit. But as a counterpoint to that, and to kind of debunk the whole elephant in the room statement, we just got the sales numbers for May of this year.
Yes.
And of the top 7 games, I mean, they had a whole top 20 listed, but of the top 7, 5 of those were Microsoft games. 5 of those were Xbox games under that umbrella. So clearly, considering that the fact that this is across all platforms, this is actually counting PC, digital's purchased for the first time. They're finally keeping track of that. And it's digital and physical. It's PS5, it's Xbox, it's everything. And these games are still weighing in at the top of the list, despite the fact that they're effectively being given away for a low monthly price. And again, this is for 1 month. Effectively, $15 would have gotten you all of these games through Game Pass. And the fact that they're still there we go.
Ultimate, yeah.
I'm dating myself here now. Yeah, it's again still a very low price, considering that buying one of these games day one is $70. Unless it's Minecraft, which I think is probably 20 or something. But, you get the point. It's shocking that that's not taking as much of a dent out of this. So I guess, the big question is like, what is the culprit? What is to blame here? If it's kind of demonstrably not Game Pass. Like, I mean, we're seeing massive sales across the board. One thing I think is worth pointing out is of these layoffs. Obviously, we're a gaming centric outlet, so we're focusing on the Xbox side of things. This was not exclusive to Xbox. This was across all of Microsoft
Yeah.
total.
Yeah, although I did want to, before we kind of move to the AI monster piece of this, Max, I kind of wanted to ask you as the resident PlayStation guru at IGN, like, are this is going to sound weird, but are PlayStation gamers kind of in a roundabout way helping make Game Pass successful by buying all these Xbox games that Microsoft is putting out on PS5, either at the same time or in some cases years, like Forza Horizon 5, for instance, years after it's come out, and they're topping the sales charts. So does that sort of only reinforce Game Pass being a successful model for Microsoft if they can have everything day and date on Game Pass on their platform, but then sell it at the same time or later for full price on PS5 to PlayStation gamers?
It's bizarre because it feels like an inverse version of what happens with, streaming video entertainment, where, if you want the brand new thing that's still in theaters, it's going to cost you 20 or 30 bucks, and you buy it that way. And then later on it comes as part of the subscription package you're paying. It's kind of the reverse of that,
Yeah.
where if you're paying the subscription, you get it day one, but then if you want to buy it later on, you have that luxury at your disposal. It's weird because Microsoft seems like they're kind of fighting a multi-front battle here, where they're obviously trying to branch out and publish on other platforms, and at the same time they're also trying to assert value for Game Pass, which clearly does have its value. But at the same time, a lot of people, I think, just really like the feeling of owning games, even if there's no physical feeling because it's all digital now. But yeah, I mean, it's bizarre to see it. It's honestly hard to track it all because it's like 4D chess over here, and we're also looking at it entirely from the outside. But I'm glad that PlayStation 5 players are buying these games, because it's helping these studios as much as they can keep the lights on.
Yeah,
and it's breathing new life into games. Like, it's really games are so expensive to make, and they take so much energy and so much just work, and it sucks to see one land with a thud, even if it's a dud of a game. It's just such a drag for all the people who sunk a large portion of their lives into making something. For it to get a little victory lap, it's nice to see. And so, as much as we don't have anyone here talking about Nintendo stuff, but one thing I think is really cool about the Switch too is it's gonna see a lot of games that have been out for a while get a new lease on life. They're gonna come around, and maybe that'll drum up interest in a sequel for something that didn't quite stick the landing the first time around. One of the weird, I mean, this is a tangent here, but one of the weird outliers on this month's Circana report of game sales is that Star Wars Battlefront 2, which came out in 2018, I think
it was 2017.
2017.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah, that's not a new game. That was I think the 12th best-selling game of the month, which is utterly baffling. But I mean, it just goes to show you that, like, yeah, there's still money in the banana stand, or whatever the Star Wars equivalent would be. And it's I mean, this is wild because, like, this is the game that I think it did well enough at launch, but was obviously lambasted and review bombed and all that, and people were pissed at it for good reason. And then quietly the developers chipped away at it and kept providing support for it, and I don't know, it's nice to see that. Like, I'm happy to see that. We obviously love to hear about these big brand new exclusives. Like, we're getting a look at Ghost of Yote in tomorrow, as the time we're shooting this. And, like, yes, I'm excited about a brand new PS5 exclusive game, but I also, I want the people who make that game to be able to keep making games. And I'd love to see that on as many platforms as possible.
Yeah.
And I mean, if the sort of, inverse of that is, like, it shows up on a streaming service and doesn't earn its money back, yeah, I don't see it really doing that. So yeah, I again, it's hard to talk about this stuff because this is a lot of people losing their livelihoods, and seeing that, like, we're not even talking about the fact that we're seeing entire projects getting scrapped. Like, Perfect Dark and Everwild are both things that were in the works for years, and people spent forever on them, and they're just bloop, gone. That's just kind of being nuked from orbit, and it's just, that sucks. That's terrible. So I guess it's a relief. It's a relief that games that maybe had their they did their thing on Xbox already they're suddenly, doing really well again over on PlayStation, even if it's not Xbox games in general, when they get like that kind of, when they get drummed up like that again. And I can't speak to like when games pop up on Game Pass, do they see a resurgence on other platforms? Like, I don't know if that's the case necessarily.
I mean, I've been told by developers here and there over the years that they have seen. Now it's certainly going to vary game by game, like indie game versus AAA game, etc. But that some developers have seen sales. Yes, that they've seen sales pick up on other platforms when a game is out on Game Pass, because it's almost that kind of rising tide lifting all ships thing of there's more word of mouth, there's more people playing it, there's more people talking about it, and so people that aren't necessarily on Game Pass will go pick it up on a different platform. But that's certainly more of a case by case thing. And I will say, to your point, it definitely warmed my heart to see a couple, like you said, some of these are old games now that are dominating the PlayStation sales charts from Microsoft. Like, I mean, I've talked probably quite a lot on this show and any other place I'm on camera at IGN about how Forza Horizon 5 was IGN's 2021 game of the year, and that completely dominated the sales charts, courtesy of everybody buying it on their PS5, which, it's to tie it back to the layoffs as an unfortunate thing is part of this. Turn 10 Studios, the makers of Forza Motorsport, the simulation racing series, they had apparently 50% of their entire team let go, and it looks like that they will not be making any additional simulation racing games, and instead they'll support Horizon from Playground Games, and maybe hopefully do continued ongoing support for Forza Motorsport, what is now the kind of live service platform thing. But as far as Horizon's success on PS5, PlayStation players have had Gran Turismo in their corner for decades, but what they haven't had, really, with a couple of brief exceptions over the years, is anything as remotely cool from the more casual arcade driving side as Forza Horizon. So that was pretty cool to see. And same thing with Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves launched in 2018 and took a while to find its sea legs, if you will, on Xbox, but it's turned into a great game. And seeing it do so well when it's launched on PS5 is, to all of your points, really heartwarming and really just encouraging for the future of those development teams getting to continue building on those games and building new games. But now this kind of brings us all back to the other half of our topic here, which is, if Game Pass isn't really the big problem that some people in the industry think it is in the wake of these horrific layoffs, well, there is something that the Seattle Times, we had the mainstream reporters jumping in, because this affects obviously the Seattle area very specifically as well, because a lot of these developers affected are in the Seattle area where Microsoft is headquartered. And the Seattle Times posted this past week, in the wake of these layoffs, an investigative piece titled "Behind Microsoft's Layoffs, a New Attitude Shaped by AI," which basically goes on to say that Satya Nadella, the very top CEO of Microsoft, sees the AI war, if you will, as kind of the new search engine. Like Microsoft, Bing didn't win. Nobody's Binging anything ever. Everybody's Googling things. And Microsoft doesn't want to end up left behind again with this burgeoning AI arms race that we're all in the middle of, whether we want to be or not. And so they plan to invest $80 billion in that in the coming year. And for a little perspective on that for our audience, although they probably have the number just as memorized as you and I do, because it's such an insane number, the Activision Blizzard acquisition for Xbox was $69 billion. So it's even well past that. It's an LA Lakers team purchase past that for Microsoft. So when they're spending that kind of money, it's you have to wonder, Max, is AI really a bigger piece of of this horrible thing that's happened to the Xbox gaming division? Is it really more about this AI war than it is about what these studios are individually doing?
I mean, it's going to be the future either way. How long it's definitely the immediate future. Is it going to be sustainable in the long run, or is it going to be kind of gradually integrated in everything else? And yes, in both cases. We got a little bit of a report about what the PS6 chipset, or they didn't say the PS6 chipset, but they're talking about PlayStation's future products and how they're working closely with AMD to have AI powered upscaling, which is already there in the PS5 Pro. It basically like inserts frames where there
Right.
weren't any previously and kind of smooths out the frame rate. That's cool. That feels like a considerably smaller scale development than competing with Chat GPT. Like Microsoft's obviously pushing Copilot left and right, and it's I don't know. I guess what's a drag to compare the Activision purchase, which again was an extremely just, if you'll forgive the term, ballsy move. Like it was just really aggressively scooping up companies, and also there was ZeniMax in there too. Microsoft grabbed a lot of studios, and like they wouldn't have as many huge as many best selling games 2 months ago if it wasn't for that. It's because they kind of licked their finger and tapped that thing and said, "That's mine. I licked it. You can't have it." But the difference is with Activision stuff, or really any Microsoft acquisition, is like those are things that make money. Like they are like Call of Duty is a golden goose that will continue laying eggs unless you eat the goose or something, or shut. I don't know what the comparison is there. AI, on the other hand, is much more kind of what is it? Bird in the hand, worth two in the bush. Like they are fully going after a new frontier,
Yeah.
and you got to spend money to make money. But it really sucks to see that kind of approach. Like again, it's robots and humans competing. It sucks to see the human cost of that. So yeah, I don't know how AI is specifically going to be integrated into everything on the gaming side of things, but we're already seeing the repercussions of it being integrated into everything else.
Yeah. And by the way, Microsoft won't be they'll be doing this probably the same thing or similar things that Sony's going to do with their next gen hardware. In the recent next gen announcement of sorts that Sarah Bond put out a video, the president of Xbox put out basically just announcing, confirming their continued partnership with AMD to make their chipset. She did mention that the AMD technology will be enhanced with the power of AI, to quote her specific words there. So most likely Microsoft's going to be doing the same stuff, and like I said, so it's AI is affecting our games in various ways, whether we want to or not. Seemingly, in the next generation of consoles, it's going to be augmenting that technology. And present day, the $80 billion that Microsoft thought necessary to invest into it has potentially cost Xbox a lot of goodwill, although many people could argue how much do they have left at this point in that department. But yeah, AI is from multiple angles really having a tremendous effect on our present and future day gaming here.
Yeah, I know there's definitely a lot of ill will towards AI. I have some of it myself, but my one hope is that in some capacity it does streamline things in a non-predatory regurgitative sense. And maybe we're going to see some new studios spring up from all the people who were let go from Xbox. That actually wouldn't surprise me one bit, because that's frequently what happens. You get
Yeah.
a team of people who work together and they suddenly find themselves out on their asses and they go, all right, well, let's pick up where we left off and make something new. I feel like we're going to get a handful of those announcements. And my best hope is that the advantages provided by AI, short of just having it spit out a bunch of crap it lifted off of Google Images or whatever, is to help make it easier for a small team of developers to make a cool video game.
Right.
And maybe those video games won't have quite so much attempted triple, quadruple A bloat, and we get maybe some smaller scale games that can still find their place in the carve out a little niche in the audience there, like we saw we saw Expedition 33 blow the hell up, and that was definitely a relative unknown with a weird title from a small-ish team. And yeah, that's kind of an underdog story in an age when we're really not seeing much attention given to those, smaller experiences.
And I'm glad you mentioned the optimism of new life springing from the death of something else, because I mean there are countless examples of that over the last 10 20 years, really throughout the history of gaming, really. But the one that just immediately popped into my mind when you said that is in fact one of, well, really a couple of Xbox's best studios. Playground Games, makers of Forza Horizon and now Fable, they were assembled from a collection of fallen racing game developers in the UK. And then prior to that, Machine Games, makers of Wolfenstein, most recent Wolfenstein games, and my personal 2024 game of the year, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, those guys came out of Starbreeze from years and years ago. Now, Starbreeze fortunately isn't dead. They're still around, but that's the kind of thing that at least we can, as you noted, optimistically take out of this.
I mean, also In Exile and Obsidian.
Sure.
It's just, yeah, studios are it's the ship of Theseus. It's like they really are the sum of all their parts, and it's always sad to hear that X percentage got chopped out of them, but like, part of a studio can wander off and become a new studio elsewhere. So I'm hoping that that's what we see out of this. That's the silver lining here.
Absolutely. All right, now it is time for a new poll question for all of you to vote on IGN.com this week. Stop on by and cast your ballot in this poll question, kind of getting back to what we were talking about in the first half of our conversation about Xbox games doing exceptionally well, dominating the sales charts on PS5. Have you purchased a Microsoft-published game on PlayStation? Yes, no, or not yet, but I plan to, since, of course, many games have been announced that Microsoft will be putting out on both Xbox and PlayStation 5, as well as, of course, PC. So
may I recommend Forza Horizon 5? It's exactly like Gran Turismo, except you can wear a Doritos costume and drive your Ford Bronco Gravedigger monster truck off the side of a volcano. Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of good times to be had in Forza Horizon 5 for sure. So go vote at IGN.com, and we'll share the results with you on next week's episode. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to Max. Thank you to Damon. We're looking forward to getting you back next week. Thank you to Jobert for producing. Before we go, though, we do want to mention a fun little gaming thing you can take advantage of and help out a good cause at the same time. You can score some incredible games through Humble, our friends and partners over at Humble. Live right now through August 5th, you can grab Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, Daemon Ex Machina, Death's Door, Cat Quest 3, and more. Whether you're building your backlog or discovering something new, it is the perfect time to pick up these fan favorites. Plus, every purchase supports a good cause. Specifically this month, your Humble Choice membership supports Covenant House. Get a curated mix of PC games every month, all for just $14.99 a month. Skip a month or cancel anytime, and know that 5% of your membership goes to charity. Well, that is our show. Thank you to Max and to Jobert and Damon. We'll see you back here next week. Thanks to everybody working behind the scenes to make this week's episode possible. My name's Ryan, and we'll be back next week with more on the latest in gaming hardware. We'll see you then.
This episode of Next Gen Console Watch was produced by myself, Damon Hatfield, and Jobert Atienza. Technical direction is by Jobert Atienza, with technical production by Marian Franzen and Amir Rakib. Audio engineering is handled by Amir Rakib. Post-production editing is by Jobert Atienza, and graphic design is by Justin Vachon. Next Gen Console Watch is an IGN production and part of the Geek Media Network.